If I can have your attention, if everyone can take their seats, please. If we can take your seats, please. We appreciate it. Appreciate it. If everyone can take your seats, please. We have to get started. You know, everybody's kind of busy. We don't want to hold anybody too long, but we want to hold you long enough to take care of business. So if everyone can have a seat, we can start. Brother Pickett, just tell Brother Pickett to close the door, you know, because we got to get started. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you very much. My name is Harold Bailey. I'm president of the Albuquerque NAACP. We're sponsoring this forum along with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. We want to welcome you. We appreciate this large crowd we have. It's very important because we have two individuals running for governor. Only one's going to make it. So whoever wins, the NAACP is going to probably come see them anyway. One thing I wanted to say is that the NAACP is not a black organization. You know, we represent everyone. Like I said earlier today when we had our conference, the NAACP was founded in 1909, and white people were at the table, you know, during the institution of slavery. We had white abolitionists, showed us the way to freedom. Some of us probably still be on the plantation if it were not for white abolitionists. So I just wanted to dispel that misconception that the NAACP is a black organization. This event is very important. We want you to vote, not just sit here and listen, but go out and vote. Vote for the candidate that you think is going to bring about positive change for everybody. You know, not just for a few people, but everybody. You know, we can look around and see what's happening on a national level. In my own personal opinion, it seems like some people are left out. We don't want that to happen here in the great state of New Mexico. So I welcome you. I hope you have a good time. I hope we have some questions that's going to bring out some positive answers. We asked a lot of individuals in the community to submit questions. You know, when you have about 100 and you want to just try to break it down to maybe 10 or 15, you know, we're going to leave somebody out, but we tried to select some questions that encompasses a lot of things that we're concerned about. For example, prison reform, gender pay equity, education, you know, all those things that, you know, we're concerned about, and most certainly, you know, diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion would be a very important role in this administration. We're going to hold everybody accountable, you know, for that, because New Mexico is a multicultural state, and we have to make sure that our governmental workforces represent that. So the candidates, when they come in, Congressman Pierce would be on this side. Congress Lady Michelle Grisham will be on this side. And when you want to meet and greet, start on that side of the wall for Michelle Grisham. And on this side, Congressman Pierce. Keep the center aisle open so we can make sure everything is safe. We have some food out there so we can meet and greet and get a couple of snacks, and then we get down to business. So my Delta sisters, is there anything else you want me to say at this moment in time? Okay, and one important thing, please turn off your cell phones. Please, you know, because this afternoon we had a lot of rings today, and we want to make sure that we don't disrupt the candidates. So if you want to fall outside, get you some food. The candidates should be here, and then we'll just bring you back, okay? Appreciate it. Again, welcome on behalf of the NAACP and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please. Ladies and gentlemen, get your last snacks. We have to get started. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes. We're giving everybody a chance to get your items together. Grab your seat. In 5 minutes, we're going to kick it off. So whatever you have to do, let's do it right now. We appreciate it very, very much.
May I have your attention, please? So we do still have some seats within the audience for those people standing in the back. If you'd like to take a seat, please, if you have a seat that's next to you that's vacant, would you raise your hand so people can sit down if they'd like to? Okay, here's some hands if you'd like to sit down. I think you'll be a lot more comfortable if you have a wonderful seat. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. We're on a fairly tight schedule. Both of these amazing candidates have very, very, very tight schedules, and we are certainly going to honor them. So my name is Pamela Herndon. I'm the first vice chair of the NAACP. Albuquerque branch. So I want to inform you of some rules of engagement for tonight, and I'm asking you to please be respectful of both of our candidates, regardless of who you are supporting. So would you please not yell at candidates, not scream at candidates, and don't hold up signs. We really want you to be respectful of both of our candidates tonight. It's incredibly important, and we are counting on you to obey this policy so that we have a great and wonderful forum tonight. You know, what you're doing this evening is actually you're engaged in what we call civic engagement. You are looking at candidates who are seeking office, and you're thinking about your own values, your own thoughts, your own ideas, and whether or not they match with yours. And then you're going to make a decision. The decision that you're going to make is who you're going to vote for. But most important, we want to make sure that you are going to vote. So what I want each and every one of you tonight in this room is to promise that you will go and vote. Is that a promise? Boy, I just want you to know everybody's happy just to see that, and thank you so very much. We have some special guests that I would like you to meet, and we're only introducing people who already hold office, and then those individuals who are running for office, we are going to ask you to stand so that people can see you. First of all, we have a Court of Appeals Judge Michael Vigil is in the room. Judge Vigil. We have Judge of the Metro Court, Judge Brianna Zamora is here. Judge Zamora. Now, have I missed any judges that are sitting judges? If I have, please let me know. We also have with us tonight, we have former State Treasurer James B. Lewis. We'd like to welcome Bernalillo County Sheriff Manny Gonzalez. And we are also very proud to have with us Representative Jane Padrell Colbert. So I tried to actually scan the room very carefully, but have I missed any elected officials that are in the room tonight? Tim Eichenberg, I saw him. So Tim Eichenberg, our state treasurer, thank you very much. And we have our Bernalillo County treasurer, none other than Nancy Bears. And if there's anyone in the audience who is running for an elected position coming up on November 6th, please stand or raise your hand so that people can see you. So there will be a time after the forum ends out in the hallway so that you can meet these candidates personally. And I hope you will take the opportunity to do so and say hello to them and find out about whether or not their goals, their values, their ideas align with yours as you make that important decision on how you're going to cast your vote. And one thing that it really is important that you do is that you vote for every single office that is on that ballot. So don't skip one because your vote counts. So please, please, please remember that. So now let me tell you about the rules of engagement for tonight with respect to the forum. So with the forum, the way we have it set up, we ask for individuals to send in questions that they would like to ask the candidates. Those questions, we have looked at those. There's been a committee that has vetted those questions very carefully, and those questions will be asked tonight. The candidates will be given 2 minutes to answer each and every question that will be asked of them, and there are a total of 12. And then there is what we call a lightning round. So there are 7 questions that are scheduled to be asked of the candidates, assuming that we have enough time to go through that. Well, they will have 30 seconds to answer those questions. So we are looking forward to that lightning round. And remember that in order to stay on task and to make sure that our time limits are met, please, please, please hold your applause until after the candidate ends their speaking. All right? So the other thing that I would like for you to please remember that we, the sponsors who are here tonight, so this forum is sponsored by Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. These are the ladies in red to my right. So give them a big hand. And the president of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority is Jasmine Madison. Jasmine. And the primary sponsor of this is the NAACP Albuquerque chapter, and I want you to meet the president, Dr. Harold Bailey.
Delta Sigma Theta.
So I'm now going to turn this mic over to our moderator for the evening as we get ready for our candidates to come in and to take their seats. Before I do that, it is my pleasure to introduce you to the 2 candidates tonight. who you will be talking to, listening to, and making your decisions about. First of all, we have Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham representing the 1st Congressional District.
Thank you.
And representing the 3rd Congressional District, at the 2nd Congressional District, Congressman Steve Pierce.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Now let's meet our moderator. This woman is the former Deputy Secretary for a number of governmental entities in the state of New Mexico, and she is a former Deputy State Treasurer. Let's welcome Marilyn Hill.
Good evening.
It is my pleasure to be here. I'm so excited about this evening. We're going to get started right away. I guess I need to use my cheerleading voice, huh? Sorry. We're going to get started right away. And the first order of business is for the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Bailey. I said brief, but not quite that brief.
Harold Bailey, President, NAACP, Albuquerque.
Dr. Dupree Shadowalker from the Mescalero Apache Reservation.
Hello, Yate. I'm Kenya Alonso. I am Navajo and Zuni Pueblo. I'm here representing Generation Justice. Generation Justice is a project that trains youth of color to harness the power of media. Thank you.
Hello, Clarence Smith, State Conference Secretary, NAACP, also Assistant Secretary, NAACP, Albuquerque Branch.
LaVonda Bowens-Woodard, member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, employed in the financial industry as executive manager for over 17 years.
Thank you.
Harold Pope Jr., recent retiree of the U.S. Air Force and member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
All right.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith is going to be the timekeeper. I want to make sure that you both can see him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bailey is going to ask the first question of
You ready? Okay, the first question. Okay.
It's all
following
good.
the script. Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham won the coin toss, so she's going to make opening statements.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to stand, although I'm the same size no matter what. But I want to thank the NAACP for hosting this really important forum, and I also want to thank this distinguished set of panelists for asking critical questions about the challenges that we face as a state. Now more than ever, we need a governor who's going to address these challenges and move us in a different direction. New Mexicans deserve a state that's on a path to prosperity, but before we travel down that path together, right, we have to change the values that are driving decisions in Santa Fe. We need a governor who's ready to lead us to a brighter future, but we also need a governor who's ready to fight, not just for the land of enchantment, but for the land of opportunity, of renewable energy, of affordable and accessible health care, and of a diverse and sustainable economy. A state where those who are willing to work hard can count on a good paying job or a career, and where New Mexicans can send their kids to good public schools in safe neighborhoods that are free from crime and drugs that have hurt so many individuals and ravaged so many New Mexico families. Now, this is a state of incredible diversity, right, and multicultural opportunities. It's ingrained in our Constitution. It's the very fabric of every one of our communities. And we need a governor who isn't just going to embrace and celebrate that diversity. We need a governor who's going to fight for that diversity. And that's why just yesterday, I declined an invitation from the White House to attend a celebration for Hispanic Heritage Month. I declined that invitation because I fundamentally oppose the policies, actions, and rhetoric out of this White House that I think defy the very values that make us American. And in fact, I'll try to speed it up. What I said in my letter to the president is America is not a nation of fear, cruelty, intolerance, and injustice. We are a nation of dignity, of humanity, of tolerance, and hope. And I have fought against racism, discrimination, and prejudice my whole career, which is why I have a 100% voting record on civil rights and a 100% scorecard from the NAACP fighting against, right, unfair policies in housing, against eliminating voting rights and affirmative action, every policy that keeps us from getting ahead and being fair and just. Look, we need a governor who's clear about standing up to those fights. We need a governor who's tough, tenacious, and pragmatic, who isn't going to shy away from making sure that New Mexico is a state of justice and equality for everyone. I hope that after tonight you believe that I'm that person, and I will have earned your support for governor. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you.
Congressman Pierce.
Thank you very much. I am Steve Pierce. I'm the Republican candidate for governor. I'm here to earn your support tonight. We face many challenges in the state. Everyone recognizes that. But until we can unite the state across political divides, across cultural divides, across anything that separates us, we are not going to get where we need to be. Now, I believe in dignity for everyone. I believe in opportunity for everyone, jobs for everyone. I believe that everyone should have the opportunity to find the kind of work and career that they want, not to be crammed and pigeonholed into a corner. I believe in educational opportunity for all. Now, when I look at some of the reports that come out from the Center of Health Studies in UNM, you begin to realize that opportunity does not exist for all in New Mexico. You can look at almost any measure. You can look at home ownership. You can look at per capita income. You can look at literacy. You can look at graduation rates, dropout rates. You can look at almost every regard in New Mexico and say that we're falling short of the idea of opportunity for all. Now, it's one thing for political candidates to say that we're going to have opportunity for all. It's completely another one to get there. As I look at the challenges that New Mexico faces, I believe that we've got to do at least 4 things simultaneously, probably more. But I will tell you as a manager, if you get too many things moving at once, you wind up just getting muddled. The 4 big issues that need to be tackled: number 1, we need to grow and diversify the economy. Number 2, we need to improve education. Number 3, we must attack the poverty that is among us. And poverty breaks down into several different subcomponents: mental and behavioral health, drug addiction, opioids. It has so many complexities. So again, the first 3. Diversify and grow the economy so that people have access to better jobs. Secondly, fix the education system. 3rd, poverty, and 4th, crime. We cannot arrest our way into success. We must begin to look at reclaiming lives that have been trapped in the system, and New Mexico seems especially bad there. So as we go tonight, I'll be fleshing out all of those different ideas, but we've got to do them simultaneously. You can imagine that a kid going to school who's being abused at home is probably not going to be quite as ready to learn as the others. I think that we need to have professional help outside the classroom in order to do that. But you see the connection between the poverty, between drug abuse in the home, between the things that we're finding our kids are experiencing every day coming here. And those experiences are exploding, not retreating. We're not doing a very good job of controlling them. If you want to look at poverty again, you're not going to attack that until you get better jobs with higher pay and more diverse economy. We need a diverse economy because right now 35% of our government's budget comes from one source. It's a very volatile source. I grew up in that source. I grew up in that corner of New Mexico, and it's up and down. Sometimes in a 24-hour period, you'll find high revenues and then low revenues. So diversifying and growing the economy so that we can attack the poverty. But the education is not going to work till we begin to heal families. Teachers cannot solve all the problems that are coming into the classroom. So we need specialists to help there. And then finally, crime. We just accept the way it is, and I will tell you that there's much that we can do. I expect we'll get questions on that tonight. Again, I'm Congressman Steve Pierce. My wife Cynthia is here with us tonight. If you would welcome her, I would appreciate that. And I look forward to the discussion thanks to the NAACP and thanks to these lovely ladies here. I appreciate you all hosting the event tonight and your gracious hospitality. I look forward to the evening's discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the candidates for their informative opening statements. Now we will begin with the questions. Dr. Bailey.
Okay, first question. There's never been an African American appointed to serve on the New Mexico Court of Appeals or the New Mexico Supreme Court. If given the opportunity, will you make history and appoint one?
Question goes to Congresswoman.
Me first?
Yes, ma'am.
We have no dearth of significant opportunities to make sure that our judicial system is as diverse as the state in which we live in. I'm witnessing now the appointment and confirmation of federal judges, 91% of whom are white. Right? It is not reflective of the diversity in our community, and it sets a clear tone and signal about the kind of decisions, right? If you don't come from that community and you don't look like that community, it can skew your vision about how to blindly administer justice. So that was a well-sounded, resounding, absolutely yes.
Congressman Pierce.
Absolutely. I, as a policymaker, have come to really see closely the importance of having an understanding of where different cultures come from. And that's not always possible through book learning. I would absolutely look for someone who understands the different cultures, is in those cultures if possible. But I will tell you, I'm also looking for someone who will not write the law, not from the bench, but simply interpret the law and enforce the law. Those are probably the two biggest things. New Mexico has such a wonderful, diverse culture. We've got so many years, 400 years of the different cultures working together, whether it's Native American, African American, or the Hispanic population, or the many other populations that are here. And I think one of the unique characteristics that we have is that we, for all purposes, we get along fairly well. But having that diverse representation on the courts, I think, is very important.
Thank you. Next question, Dr. Shadowwalker.
We are a state with 3 national labs, and those labs often recruit out of state to fill unemployment or employment openings. What is your plan to improve access to science, technology, engineering, and math for our youth so they are competitive for the jobs at these national labs?
This begins at the earliest phase of our education. Again, I referred to the studies from the Center on Health Policy, and Dr. Gabriel Sanchez mentions in there just reading with kids when they're young is one of the most productive things that we can do. So I visualize a school system where we have volunteers to come and read with every kid during the school day, at least an hour a day. As we set kids on a pathway to literacy, now then they're going to be able to function into the higher performing classes like the STEM subjects in order to qualify for that employment at the labs. But I will tell you already, now Los Alamos is in a transition period, that I visited with the director of the Sandia Labs and asking specifically about minority employment, because if we're going to improve median income, we've got to start getting the higher paying jobs for all across the population. He said they had already begun to look at their applications, at their interview phases, and understood that it wasn't always equal, and they're beginning to adjust that now. So my commitment is that I want to double and possibly even triple the number of African American students in the STEM subjects in college, in order that when those doors get open at the labs, we begin to hire them. I fully expect that we'll hire a lot more New Mexicans in those high-tech positions when we start graduating them. People who graduate from the New Mexico schools actually get very strong recommendations from their employers. They like our employees. We need to get them the training to where they qualify for the highest level jobs at the labs. And my commitment is that we will do that across all population bases, no matter what the culture is.
Thank you. Congresswoman?
Thank you. So I'm going to take a different approach. I don't disagree that we've got to do much more for both STEM and STEAM and address our public education issues. But our labs have a unique responsibility to be diverse and to hire New Mexicans, and they have not typically done that. In Congress, I've required that both Sandia and Los Alamos labs provide a diversity program and personnel. We require that they report to the minority caucuses and evaluate their performance in that regard. In addition, we are looking at making sure that those performance measures find their way into funding. In addition, as the congressional chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, we've been requiring and asking tech companies, Fortune 500 companies, and media companies to adopt the Rooney Rule, which basically says that you have to guarantee that in the interview process, you will interview a person of color or a woman in all of your leadership positions. I think these are rules that should also be applied right here at all of our national labs, the 2 labs and the Air Force Research Laboratory. If we don't make those fundamental requirements, we aren't going to see the differences that we would like to see. New Mexicans have every right for those high-paying, high-quality jobs, and they are just as qualified as the folks that they are recruiting from out of state, and we must change their recruitment practices, which have them going to schools in Colorado and Texas and in California. They can recruit from our schools. They are just as effective and just as competent as the schools that are around us. That's how we're going to change this. We're going to require that they make those changes immediately.
Thank you. The next question. Okay.
Okay. Sure.
Should we stand up better? Okay. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. The next question is Congresswoman will answer it first. Ms. Alonso.
New Mexico, oh, is this on? New Mexico is currently 50th in education. What steps will you take to change that statistic?
And I could barely hear your question. I'm just going to repeat the question. New Mexico is ranked 50th in education. What steps are we going to undertake to address that? Every step possible, but here's where we're going to start. I've put together a comprehensive plan to address our public education issues. So number one, let's all embrace the court decision that unequivocally now states that we've been underfunding our public schools for the last 8 years by hundreds of millions of dollars, right? There is no way we're giving our kids a chance to succeed if we're taking money right out of the classroom, right, to guarantee them a high-quality education. And when we did that, we also did not sufficiently pay our educators, did not pay them for professional development. We didn't do any of the things that would create an opportunity, a viable opportunity for those kids' future. And in addition, The high-stake testing part has also limited the amount of teaching that each of our students has in the classroom, and using a high-stake test that the federal government said you don't have to use anymore as an evaluation for our educators has driven our educators right out of our state. Thank you. To address the challenges, in addition to fully funding our schools and special education and diversity and inclusion education, we need to bring back school-based health centers, and we need to make sure that community schools, which have business community partners, and bring social services right to the schools so that we can address these issues of homelessness and poverty and hunger, and attach and address by making sure that those families are eligible for the very services that will put those children and our students in a position to learn. These are the things that will move New Mexico in the right direction, and I have no doubt that we can lead this country in a productive and positive public education, and I am dedicated to getting that job done. Thank you.
The judge's decision was very clear and succinct, and I will do everything in my power to enforce the judge's decision. But let us make no mistake, pouring money into the classroom is not going to cure a lot of the ills that face us. For instance, when I'm talking to teachers a lot of times, I say, yes, I'll get your pay up. But if I doubled your pay, let's just talk hypothetically, if I doubled your pay, would you stay one day longer? Because teachers tell me, I'm going to get there and I'm going to retire the worst day I can. Teachers a lot of times would go 30 and 40 years. Talked to one lady who'd been 50 years in the education system, and yet today they're saying they're going to retire. So I say, hypothetically, if I could double your pay, would you stay one day extra? No. We also have to look at the fact that 50% of our teachers who are certified in New Mexico do not teach. They don't want to be in the classroom anymore. So when I say that we're going to, first of all, let our teachers teach, that's what they signed on to do. They didn't sign on to be behavior counselors, mental health counselors. They didn't sign on to be drug counselors. They didn't sign on to be truancy officers of police or parents. If we will take those problems and put them with specialists and leave our teachers teaching, let them do what they do well, then I think we're going to start seeing an increase. Right now, teachers are telling their kids, don't major in education or you're going to end up where I am. So an alarming thing, Eastern New Mexico usually graduates about 60 teachers every year. And so when our superintendents go over, they can talk to a deep pool. This year, superintendent over at Carrizosa said one person graduated from Eastern because they're listening to their teachers. They don't want to major in it. So letting our teachers teach, return the joy to the classroom. Yes, we will get the pay up. Yes, we will comply with the court decision, but we must do so much more. The problems out of the classroom with specialists. I would push decision-making down to the local level, to the superintendent level, and finally apprenticeship programs. We can talk more about those later, but they're going to improve our performance of our schools dramatically for the kids not going to college. So a lot of things that need to be done in education. I'm committed to all of them.
Thank you. Congressman Pierce, you have this question first. Ms. Bowens-Woodard.
Research shows there is a huge pay gap between women of color and white non-Hispanic men. As governor, what is your plan for narrowing the pay gap for women of color in New Mexico?
Again, we addressed this up front, that we've got to look and make sure that the women of color, that everyone has access to the best education possible. And that's, again, beginning with reading. Literacy is going to make sure that people don't end up in poverty. You must take a look at that level. It's got to be by individual, every student. When we set them on the right path to literacy, now then they're able to choose whichever major they want to. The better the major, the higher the performing salaries are, and that's got to be it. But if we're going to train people, if we're going to put them in the education classes, that comes back to this diversifying and growing the economy. I absolutely believe that we must have three kinds of economic development simultaneously. First of all, you've got to have the high tech. Secondly, blue collar for the kids not going to college, and keep in mind that 50% of New Mexico students will not go to college, and 50% who do are not going to finish. And so we need the blue-collar jobs, those high-skill jobs. Being a mechanic today, diesel mechanic, probably making six figures, 100,000 or more. Driving a truck, probably making more than $100,000. So these are not kind of giveaway jobs. They're very good, but we need to be training our younger generation. So again, high-tech, blue-collar, and finally, we've got to have rural jobs. We can't just move everybody out of the rural counties, but especially for the minority population, for those who are just trying to make their way up the ladder, that's something I'm very familiar with. I began my life, my dad was a sharecropper, and we made our way up the life of ladder one small step at a time. It began with home ownership and building asset bases. So that's something that we've got to look at, the home ownership. I've taken the lead on Native American housing nationwide. I will take the lead on all housing for all people in New Mexico statewide. I think if we will settle the questions at home, give people a stable base, I believe that all populations can find the success they're looking for.
Thank you. Congresswoman.
Thank you. When I first got to Congress, I remember distinctly a panel about pay equity, because I've been on pay equity federal legislation, and I will get there, I promise, but it's about time New Mexico has pay equity, pay equality legislation to make sure that we don't have a pay gap for anyone, including women of color in this state or anywhere else in the country. But I was particularly struck by a couple who came to talk about pay equity issues and discrimination in the workforce. Two physicians, a couple, both met in med school, both cardiologists, both working for a pharmaceutical company doing cardiology drug research. One night at dinner, they were both talking and discussing their bosses, their divisions, their research, and their salaries. And while the woman in this relationship had better grades, extra course hours in that specialty, and won the university and med school's research grant for her work, she was making 35% less than her husband in the same company. It doesn't have to do with the educational status. It has to do with the fact that we allow discrimination in the workplace. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. We must hold those actors accountable, or we will not see that income gap go away. And I also want to talk about educators. One of the reasons educators are paid so low is because educators were initially recruited as housewives. That meant that we were recruiting women, and it was okay to pay them less. It is not okay to pay women less, and New Mexico should lead the country by making it clear that we will not tolerate that in our economy any longer.
This next question I will ask, it's a lightning round question, and you have 1 minute to answer the question, starting with Congresswoman Johan Grisham. New Mexico is one of 6 states that does not have an anti-hazing law. If elected governor, would you sign a bill protecting citizens from hazing activities and that punish those responsible?
Absolutely. We have seen hate crimes dramatically rise in this federal administration. We need to do everything against hazing, bullying, prejudice, hate crimes, and discrimination. And I would absolutely sign such legislation and lead it, if necessary, right from the governor's office on the 4th floor.
Congressman Pierce?
The answer is yes. I said in my opening statement that opportunity, that dignity, that respect should be available to all, and that means all. So yes, but it's going to take more than that. It's going to take more than a law. It's going to take people who will stand up. I've been able to stand up in my current position against unjust treatment, and so would continue to do that as governor. Yes.
Thank you. Congressman. You have this next question first, coming from Mr. Pope.
The operating budget for the African American Performing Arts Center has been the victim of a line item veto every year for the past 8 years. Tell us how you plan to ensure that the African American Performing Arts Center receives an operating budget as other state performing arts centers do if you are elected governor.
When I've watched the budget for New Mexico, and I sat on the Appropriations Committee when I was in the state legislature, so I got to see that very closely. I will tell you that when I watched the last few years and the clawbacks, that's generally a sign of pretty bad mismanagement. You should be able to see flows coming and going. You should have a reserve in your budget that keeps you from going and taking any money back. And so when I watch us depend on one industry for 35 to 40% of our revenues to the state, that's why I have such a passion for diversifying and growing the economy. If you will diversify it, get other businesses here, then the volatility of the oil and gas industry will not affect us. But then you get to the deeper question, if there are cuts in one agency and not in the next. That's something that I just don't watch from the sidelines. I will get very involved in it. I just don't like unfair treatment anywhere in the system. And if the cultural arts in one respect are getting the same budget, if it's level or increasing, then everybody's going to do it. We all will share pain when pain is necessary, but I will not watch while individual groups are singled out without reason, without purpose. And too often I'm able to see that in Washington and Santa Fe. So again, you will have the right performance mechanisms for your budget as a whole, but then somebody actually has to be calling to account those people and the appropriators when they begin to play games with things. A lot of the times, some of this gets down to be very personal. It's a person, you get very few people on an appropriation committee dealing with certain issues, and you get 1 or 2, 5, 10, 15 people, it begins to be very personal. I just don't want personalities to enter in. Let's just treat everybody right and fair. We can get there.
Thank you. I have actually a real state record about investing in performance centers, community centers, senior centers, cultural centers, and making sure that these investments were not just available in the urban centers of the state, but make sure that they were available statewide, using every vehicle possible to assure that you don't diminish those budgets, which decrease opportunity and access and opportunity for all New Mexicans, and fly in the face of our efforts to build our arts and entertainment and tourism economies. We need to be doing all of that. Governors should be leading in infrastructure investment and operating budgets to make sure that the investments that you have already made can continue to be a success. Now, I've had a record of doing that in an anemic economic environment when I was working in the Johnson administration. This was more about the inability to show leadership as a governor, and the inability to grow the economy, and the inability to understand the value and hard work of those investments, including the African American Performing Arts Center in this community. It was incredibly short-sighted and would have brought more jobs to this community and would have guaranteed more opportunity for our young people. I would lead those efforts, I would be creative in those efforts, and I would make sure that they were sustainable by having partners statewide and across the country. Thank you.
The next question will be answered first by Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham. Dr. Bailey.
There's a lack of representation or no representation of African Americans in cabinet level positions and key policy positions in New Mexico state government. Tell us about your plan to embrace diversity in your cabinet appointments and key policy decision positions.
Thank you very much for that question. That is one of the best opportunities that the next governor is going to have, is to have the highest quality, ready to go, diverse cabinet who is very clear about serving their community and their constituents. You and I actually got to serve together, and you might recall that when I was first appointed by Governor King, I was an agency head. And it was really difficult as just an agency head to get the cabinets to work with me and talk with me about issues that affected the constituents that I was serving, which are senior citizens. In the Johnson administration, I actually passed a law. I passed a law and got it signed by Governor Johnson that required the other cabinets to talk to me about policy, particularly, I kid you not, it's called the Long-Term Care Services Act, to talk to me before they made policy decisions. If you don't have a diverse cabinet, you are less likely to have the kind of work and collective effort that can really make a difference in every single one of our communities, including in the Office of African American Affairs. The notion that this constitutes your cabinet diversity and the notion that that office is not leading public health research, the Department of Health priorities, the Human Services Department priorities, the budget priorities, infrastructure priorities, educational priorities, is a disservice to the entire cabinet and to that office in particular. In my administration, that is not how it's going to work. We want a diverse, completely qualified, effective cabinet who is ready to go and ready to reflect the values of New Mexicans.
Congressman Pierce.
When I look at the agencies in New Mexico, I just say that every one of them seem broken. So the first thing that I'm looking for in cabinet secretaries is management skills. Yes, they need to know their issue area, but you must also be a manager. If you have 500 or 1,000 employees, that's very significant. But I will tell you that I'm also, as I said, for the judges, very familiar with the fact that different viewpoints come from different cultures. As I travel around, as I've served in Congress, I keep a database. I keep it on my own computer. It's just people and cell phone numbers who have good skill sets. I have a little area where I talk about those skill sets. In the year and a half that I've been running here, travel statewide, I've been on the Indian reservations, been to the Black Expo, been to just every event that I can across every cultural line. I'm always picking up cards. Picked up one tonight. I have somebody that already is written into the line that says, why don't we do this? I said, I'll need somebody good to do that. If you want to be considered, give me your card. So I've got that database, a lot of people, a lot of depth, tremendous diversity. When you get elected into these governor positions or congressional positions, it's a little bit late to start thinking who you would reach out here. You want that management skill, you want decisiveness, but you also want that ability to see from different perspectives. You can't just, on the drop of a hat in a 60-day period after the election till you're sworn in, find it. So that's the reason that I've lived this way, that I'm always looking for that talent, no matter who they are, no matter what their registration, no matter what their culture is. I've got a lot of people that are very diverse who are ready to help me in a lot of ways.
Thank you. Congressman Pierce, you have the first question. It'll be asked by Dr. Shadow Walker.
New Mexico is often represented as a tricultural state, referring to Anglo, Hispanic, and Native American cultures. How will you change the narrative to discuss the fourth culture that includes a discussion about African American culture and heritage of our state?
I think that, that it just leads by example. And again, I would hesitate to even limit it to 4 cultures. You just have such a diverse population here in New Mexico. And frankly, that's one of the things I love most about New Mexico. And so for me, I'm simply always talking across the lines of division. We're including, we're talking, we're going, we're representing. But one of the biggest things we can do is begin to recognize achievement no matter what. And so I would spend more time looking at achievement in each one of those population centers, each one of the cultures, in order that other people would say, look, I haven't even thought about that, but yes, we have Native Americans that are really very good in science, or just met an African American who went to the Air Force Academy, and I said, look, I want to create an entire corps. I've talked to Heather Wilson. I want to create an entire corps, 20 or 25 African-American pilots from here. Will you lead the effort? Met him about 3 days ago at a veterans event. He said, absolutely. So just reaching out and reaching across those lines. I also feel like, and Heather Wilson asked me, please send me all the different populations you can. Send me Native American pilots, send me Hispanic pilots, Asian pilots. And so just leading by example is probably the most powerful thing we can do, and then having formal recognition, and then holding up our local heroes. Too often we look at who's doing what in New York and on the front page of faraway newspapers. I think we ought to be recognizing the heroes among us. When we do that, we'll be recognizing all the different cultures of New Mexico. Again, I'll lead by example.
Thank you.
We've been challenged as a state by the sheer demographics here, right? Having more tribes and pueblos than any other state, having Hispanic heritage that's 400 plus years old. And as a result, we have not done our part to shift the narrative from a tricultural state to a multicultural state. This community boasts an incredible international district. It is time to not focus on the fact that African Americans in New Mexico constitute less than 3% of the population, but rather lead and determine that we are a multicultural state. We are better for it. We will do the right work and diligence to hold every community up, every member of every community, and we do that by recognizing how diverse we are and highlighting the positive aspects as well as the challenges. I mean, one of the challenges that the next governor is going to have is because of that demographic, we often don't even have the data about making policy decisions that it would impact productively, enhancing the quality of life of one community or another, but particularly African American community. And if we don't do that better, we aren't going to deal with health disparity, and we aren't going to be able to effectively deal with criminal justice reform. So I would absolutely move to make sure that the state starts using that language. We are a multicultural state with incredible diverse heritages. We embrace and celebrate every single one, and we will fight to make a difference in the quality of life of every single person and every single community in this state.
Thank you. This next question is a lightning round question, 1 minute. Congresswoman, you have the first response. Ms. Alonzo, please ask your question.
What is your plan to address the opioid crisis in New Mexico, and how will you avoid criminalizing those who simply need treatment?
I don't know how that's a lightning round question, but we're gonna, I don't know. But I'm gonna do my best, all right? Look, this is the only state in the country that 100% canceled all of our behavioral health Medicaid contracts. Not only was it unconscionable, it's quite frankly illegal, and I'm the only member of the federal delegation. We all initiated a fight to restore those programs, but I hung in there, and now there's an active investigation, which I hope will bolster our Medicaid investments for behavioral health. We have to tackle the opioid problem and addiction here. We cannot let our jails and prisons be a de facto behavioral health treatment effort. We cannot do that. So in 15 seconds, I think medical cannabis can help treat opioid addiction. We have to do more prevention. We're going to restore all of our behavioral health contracts. We're going to do drug courts. We're going to do school-based health centers that have behavioral health services in all of our schools, pre-K all the way to high school. Lightning round.
Congressman Pierce.
Sure, the opioids are just robbing the spirit and the soul out of our state, and it's not confined to one geographic part or any other. I would agree with my opponent that the distribution of our mental health to Arizona was not a productive thing. It destroyed all of the rural health clinics. An out-of-state provider, they're interested in rates of return. We should be looking at the outcomes. If we're going to look at outcomes in the opioid addiction problem, we've got to look at the pharmaceuticals. We must look at the physicians who are recommending. We need a way to dispose of the opioids. We need to take a look at the Postal Service, which is sometimes sending in massive amounts into small geographic areas without asking questions. A lot of the opioids are coming from overseas. We just have to do a full array of things, but mental, behavioral health counseling, they all intersect with the opioid and drug addiction problem. That's why if we're going to address poverty, we got to address these issues solidly and soundly with purpose.
Thank you. We're back to the 2-minute questions.
Okay.
Congressman Pierce, you have this question first, going to be asked by Ms. Bowens-Woodard.
Contracting with the state is a lucrative business. New Mexico implemented the first gender pay equity initiative in the United States several years ago, requiring state contractors to report pay by gender as a condition of submitting a bid in the RFP process. According to the report issued by the state auditor last year, this policy is not enforced. As governor, how will you enforce the gender pay equity initiative and how?
First of all, the law is there and it should be implemented, and one of the reasons that it's important to do the audits is to start finding out where the soft spots are. I will tell you, as a manager, as a business owner, as someone who wrestled to try to keep the books balanced every day, I'm very familiar with digging completely into the numbers. I don't just look at the contracts, but also the individual piece of the contracts. Just had to work with my staff today. We were buying something through the campaign, and they were saying just the top line figures. You must begin to penetrate into it, and that's what you're talking about. Some of that work, I'll just be frank with you, I do it myself. I'm very good at it. It's the reason our business was successful. We fought against international competitors, we being my wife and me, and we were able to grow our business because we paid attention to detail. It's against the law to have pay disparity. That is solid in the law, and I will hold every agency accountable, every contract accountable, and we will do, if we can't get the auditor to look, I'll audit them. I'll get somebody in the top level of the administration to audit themselves. You just can't let these things go because entire lives, the hope and the belief that systems are fair, that they're equitable, that everybody's got a fair chance. If everybody has a fair chance, I will tell you most people are satisfied with whatever level they rise to. But it's when we feel the oppressiveness of not having equal treatment and not having a voice to it. I'll be the one that they come to say things are not working right. I've done that in Congress. I will continue to do it as governor. It's essential for the top person to be able to look down at some of the most minute details. What you're describing is a contractual thing that is a minute detail that should be looked at because it's super important no matter how small a detail it is.
Thank you.
My turn. I think it's not a small detail. I think it's really important to set a standard that we will hold our contractors accountable, and that's why we want to do that at the state level, because there are significant numbers of contractors, and as you said in your question, depending upon the kinds of contracts, you just look at Medicaid contracts and long-term care contracts in Medicaid, they are hundreds of millions of dollars to operate our Medicaid system. There are two things that a governor must do. One, you make it a performance measure for your cabinet secretaries and your appointees. If they can't demonstrate that they're holding their contractors, they make those decisions on your behalf, running state government, then they don't get to keep their jobs. You make it very clear about what it is that you expect from the leadership in your cabinet. When that expectation is made clear, every contracting entity and every part of state government and every department or agency will follow suit. And those organizations and businesses who have been violating law, if they continue to violate the law, will be held accountable in two ways. Will meet the letter of the law, and they should be barred from any state contracting for a period of 3 years or more. This is how you make it very clear that you will enforce the laws that are already on the books. Because when we don't do that, we are signaling that we don't care about discrimination in our state. And we do. Thank you.
This is another lightning round question. Well, actually, we have one before that.
Okay.
And you're first on this one. Mr.
I
Pope.
can't keep up with you.
Mr. Pope.
All right. As governor, will you use state resources to create and maintain detention centers for immigrant children who have been separated from their parents?
Absolutely not. Thank you. When I became chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, I certainly did not expect that we would be in the fight of our lives to protect innocent children and individuals migrating to this country seeking asylum and refugee status. Not only is it unconstitutional the way in which we're behaving, it is the most callous, heinous policy I have ever witnessed in my lifetime. I have visited every foster care program along the well, not every, the significant foster care programs that are taking the majority of new, right, children that have been both separated as this zero tolerance policy took effect, and unaccompanied minors, detention centers along the border, the tent city in Tornillo, and I've been visiting prisons where we are also putting individuals who are coming here seeking asylum and refugee status, and I have visited the temporary detention holding centers right at the border. This state has a unique opportunity, like all the other border states and the southwestern states, to stand up against these injustices by refusing to allow increased detention beds, standing up against the separation of children, and I've been giving this a lot of thought. I believe that states and governors are in a unique position to actually create licensing requirements and oversight of these very federal programs, because it's usually on federal property, and so they say federal prison, federal money, federal property. How about this? I license every doctor, every community health provider, every person who gets trained to be a law enforcement officer. We have a unique opportunity to stand up against that effort and require safe and supportive environments for these families who are coming to our country.
Thank you. Congressman Pierce.
Again, the answer to the question, would I build with state money detention centers for kids that have been separated? No, I was one of the first Republicans to speak to the Trump administration and say, I don't think this is the right way forward. But I also watched as the Obama administration just dealt with the same question, the same problem. At two different points, they had detention centers in the 2nd District of New Mexico. So I went in and we traveled and we looked at those. We looked to make sure that the kids are being treated properly, that they're being treated right. They also had to wrestle with exactly what do you do when you're going to release them, because a lot don't come with their parents. A lot are turned over to either custodians or whatever. And they, in wrestling with it, made some mistakes that were just about the same that the Trump administration was making. It is a very complex problem. At the bottom, at the end of the discussion, at the bottom of the question, you have to ask, do we want open borders or not? I'm not one who wants an open border. I don't think it's a way that a country will ever survive. It is not done in any other country in the world. They don't just have free access back and forth. Maybe you can declare the European Union. But if we're going to have a process to come here legally, if you're going to have a process, then we must figure out how to deal with this very difficult problem of when unaccompanied minors come or when parents come. I don't know exactly what the answer is. We've wrestled with it in Congress. Obviously, Congress couldn't come up with the answer. Neither party has come up with an answer over the past 15 years, 20 years. But my dedication is to see that people are treated right, they're treated fairly, they're treated with respect. That is my promise.
Thank you. This next question is a lightning round question. Congressman Pierce, you have the question. Dr. Bailey is asking.
The state permanent fund contains a significant sum of money. As governor, if you were to tap into that fund, how would you use those funds to improve our state's healthcare system?
The state permanent fund is set up for when we no longer have oil and gas. So our budget right now is about $6 billion, more or less, and about $2 billion of that comes from oil and gas. So you have to understand the nature of what the permanent fund is to do. So when I hear people say, well, we can take a little bit here and a little bit there, already I've talked to the State Investment Council. They're the custodians of our general fund, and they say that we're on a pathway that the permanent fund will not exist in the 50-year future, and they can't tell exactly when it won't. But again, visualize this, that maybe it's 24, maybe 26 billion, whatever you want, whatever number. But divide that by 2, and now then we're about to put another $1 billion from oil and gas in, so $3 billion a year. If you divide that into 24 billion, you're looking at 8 years. That's a very short time period, so I'm very cautious about spending up of the future. I will diversify, I will grow the economy to where we have a broader tax base. That's where we can get the funds to put into more health care, to address the poverty, the mental health, the behavioral health, to address the recidivism in our prisons. There are so many things that we need to do, but I'm very, very cautious because the permanent fund, again, is set up for when we don't have oil and gas anymore, when that $3 billion a year becomes zero. So when people say, yeah, we'll just take a little bit here or there, I look at the 50-year future as a policy person, as a business person, as an economist. I think we must take a long-term view as well as a short-term view.
Thank you.
Thanks. I want to do 2 things about that question. One, I want to state unequivocally that I think healthcare is a fundamental human right. And so the decisions that you make have to align with that overarching theme. 2, I think that the land grant permanent fund, I'm very clear that is an endowment fund set up by our Constitution to assure that we meet our constitutional requirements for education. Now, I think we could argue, actually, and I haven't until this question, so it's a thoughtful question, about whether or not assuring, right, a positive education, that you can't do that if kids come to school sick. But I'm more interested, to tell you the truth, in the land grant permanent fund to work with voters to increase the percentage rates that we are taking from the fund so that we can invest it in not only early childhood education, but making sure that we meet the needs of all of our students in our public education system. We have a real opportunity with Medicaid. We are not leveraging Medicaid. We should do Medicaid buy-in. We should enact the New Mexico Healthcare Security Act, and we should start figuring out a way to have a regional healthcare delivery system with states like Colorado and Arizona and maybe even Nevada and Utah. We have real opportunity here. It's about time we realize it, and I am very excited about our potential for a brand new healthcare delivery system for every New Mexican.
Thank you. The next question is for Congresswoman Lujan Grisham. Dr. Shadowwalker.
New Mexico currently has one of the highest rates of hunger among the 50 states, with 1 in 4 children experiencing hunger. Currently, the need completely exceeds the capacity of New Mexico's food banks and pantries. What programs will you propose to provide immediate assistance to New Mexico's children, senior citizens, and working families?
Thank you. Well, one thing that this governor should be doing, and I will do as governor, is I will engage directly in the fight in Congress to eliminate SNAP, which is the food assistance program that so many children, veterans, disabled individuals, senior citizens, and active men and women in our military are relying on to meet their basic food needs in this state and in this country. We have been one of the most food insecure states in the country for as long as I've been in Congress. And I am right now fighting against what they're calling work requirements to eliminate SNAP provisions and protections in the Farm Bill. And it's what's stalling out the Farm Bill, which is really needed to make sure that we have the investments in our state to make sure that we are addressing real hunger. I've also supported to make sure, right, that we provide breakfast, that we treat every school as an environment to make sure that we're meeting the nutrition issues of all of those students and their families. And then the big issue that we've got to embrace and address is that we've got to do something about our persistent pockets of poverty. That means that we have to start investing in a whole new dynamic, which means you invest in these families, you get them these services, we eliminate cliff effects, which means if I get a tiny raise, $200, I lose $600 in child care benefits. We trap New Mexicans into a cycle of poverty. So lifelong education, universal pre-K, making sure that we eliminate the cliff effect, and we have to make sure that food pantries don't have to choose between storage and distribution of their food, which is legislation I have proposed every single year, that we address the Farm Bill in Congress, and it's a bill we can get done right here at the state.
Thank you. Congressman Pierce.
Your question is exactly on point, and in my initial opening statement, we said we've got to solve many problems simultaneously. We've got to grow and diversify the economy, education, poverty, and crime in order to address your question. We have an increasing breakdown in the American family. We have 50% of New Mexicans, 47%, are on Medicaid. We have dysfunctionality because of drug abuse that is becoming, according to the foster system, the people who are the CYFD and they're watching and they're trying to find foster parents, we have a dysfunctional family. So again, the most important thing that we can do is begin to restore that ability to get and have and hold a job, the apprenticeship programs, the literacy at a very early age. The Brookings Institute is renowned for its studies, says 3 things will keep you out of poverty, 3 things will keep hunger from the door. Graduate from high school, get a job, and don't have kids until you have a relationship. And if we will just start rebuilding that structural piece of the country, then we're going to reestablish the ability of families to take care of their kids. We just can't continue to say that we're going to fix it from outside. So that concentration on what's happening in the family, the drugs, the behavior health, the mental health, the poverty, all of those come together. But we've got to have the jobs in addition, and then the apprenticeship programs in order to train people to put them into it. At some point, we probably are going to have to just put a steady hand on the shoulder and encourage people. Again, I watched as my family came from disbelief that we can't get out of the problems that we're in into, yes, we can do this and we can succeed. Those are the kinds of things we need to do. Yes, we'll have the SNAP programs, we'll have the Medicaid programs, we'll have those, but we have to hit the fundamental problems that we're bumping up against in New Mexico if we're going to create fundamental change.
Thank you. The next question is for Congressman Pierce. Ms. Alonzo.
How will you help to preserve sports programs at our colleges and universities to ensure that students can participate in and enjoy athletics as part of the college experience?
Number one, we'll run the budgets where we don't have to cut out programs that I think are pretty essential to our colleges. I watch with some dismay the whole process at UNM, where they take a very successful and popular soccer program, a skiing program, whichever ones they just decided to cut. As an economist, when you get to the point where you start pruning off pieces of the budget, and that's basically what they did, they just pruned off those and said we're going to pitch them in the trash. It indicates a failure in the budgeting process for years. You just get to that point and you just say, okay, I can't fix it. I never got to that point in our company. Cynthia ran the financial aspect, I ran the operations, but we always kind of had that 1-year view and a 2-year view, as well as this week view. If you will take a look at your budgets, you should never get in the position where you simply cut stuff off. But then, again, the programs have to be fair, equitable. Everyone's got to have a chance. When I was in high school, I watched a friend of mine who was playing. He was an All-American shortstop at Hobbs in baseball. I'm telling you, if you didn't play basketball in Hobbs, you got no attention. And I watched the coaches in his senior year move him over to first base so that one of the local town people could get their son at shortstop. It was dismaying. I watched him though, his African-American kid, Robert Evans. He ended up coaching at Arizona State, coaching basketball. He's All-American basketball and college. I watched him earn All-American status at first base, but I'd never forgot it. And decades later, he and I happened to be on the same stage speaking. I brought that up, that this is a class act, but he should have never been put in that position to start with. So it's not just enough to have the programs. You've got to have an oversight of the programs that makes sure that we don't do things like Robert Evans experienced. Again, it's in my heart. We're not going to let those things occur.
Thank you.
I've been very active about what happened at the University of New Mexico. Initially, I sent a letter asking for data, which I'm embarrassed to say to this audience, both here in person and those viewing, that I did not receive adequate information or transparent data from the University of New Mexico, nor was I able to ascertain from their response if there really is a Title IX problem or not. And if there is, they should work immediately to address their Title IX issues, but you don't do that by removing the other athletic programs that are clearly, this is a budget and spending problem of prior athletic directors. The next governor is going to have a unique opportunity to appoint new regents for our universities. And these regents have to understand these three things. They must have independent academic institutions. They must be transparent about their budget and spending. And 3, their customers primarily are the students and the students' quality of life and the decisions that those students make, both in being recruited and participating in these sports, by removing them, harm their ability to determine their next set, right, of educational opportunities. It's outrageous. I will work immediately with the legislature to provide whatever oversight and investment we need to immediately restore those programs and to hold the universities like the University of New Mexico accountable.
Thank you. Congresswoman, you answer this question first. Ms. Bowens-Woodard.
African American children often face continued badges and incidents of racism in the classroom, but they are often expelled, sent to detention at a higher rate than their classmates. How will you help alleviate this problem in New Mexico schools?
This is really an incredibly important question. And while the data of enhanced discipline, particularly in our African American community and towards our African American students, is not data that pans out statewide, it is significant where it is occurring. And this discipline in and of itself means that these are students that are higher risk, right, of failing and dropping out, which means that they are higher risk of having a pipeline right into our criminal justice system. In order to deal with that, I would instruct the PED, Public Education Department, immediately in those communities and in those schools where those issues are prevalent, that they will immediately undertake a brand new disciplinary program that is fair, just, and is not attacking one group of students versus another. That's tantamount of hazing and bullying by the school itself. And if we need to have monitors and personnel to provide the oversight and support, also to give those families a sense and chance that they have every opportunity and obligation to complain about those issues, and that they will be treated with respect and dignity, and they'll have champions in that school. That's how we began to change these systems that, in fact, in New Mexico, we have tolerated for far too long. The minute we start to address them head on by admitting that they're a real problem in our schools, means that we are really doing something about these issues that create injustice and racial inequality in our state. They must be eradicated from our schools.
Thank you.
In 1957, we were moving from Eunice to Hobbs, and we stopped out at Nadine, which is 5 miles out of Hobbs. Mom just knew that we weren't going to have a chance to do much. She started a little 4-H club out there for just the people in the area. So we had Hispanics, the Armitages were a black family that lived about 2 miles from us toward town, and then several of us families out there. I didn't really understand what racism was until Al Armitage, my older brother, and myself went down to El Paso to show pigs, and the three of us walking around, I could feel the sentiments that you're talking about here, the things that you didn't understand exactly at 9 and 10 years old what you're doing. But also another formative thing was occurring about that time. We always struggled for money, and the Braceros, Mr. Job had a field right behind us, and the Braceros would come in, and Mom would have us down there, Pierce kids, Rascones, and the Braceros, and I really grew to love people who would do anything to make it work, but also began to watch and see that they were getting a fair shake. So when I was in Congress, we had a young man, Adam. I went to the NAACP meeting there and a banquet, and people had grown up and known my whole life were just, they were jawed down. I finally asked what's going on. Adam had been in combat over in Afghanistan or Iraq. They, very, very racial things. So I took that issue on, and I took it to the commander here in New Mexico, and he ignored it. I took it then to the head of the National Guard. He ignored it. I took it to the head of the Air Force. He ignored it. Finally took it to the Inspector General, and they didn't ignore it. We ended up replacing a general here over that guard, over that incident, and everybody had tried to cover it up. I will lead by example. When we have unjust, unfair treatment, I don't have any problem getting into it. Again, it's built into my DNA from the earliest days of my life.
This is going to be our final question. Dr. Bailey is going to ask this question. Congresswoman, you have the first chance to answer it.
Right. Tell us one good thing about your opponent's platform.
That's an important question, because yeah. I think that civility has left political discourse. In all earnesty, that's a really important question that we need to be asking all candidates. I have the unique and the same for Steve Pierce. We've known each other for a long time. I worked with him. I was a cabinet secretary or an agency head, and he was in the legislature, and I've also worked with him as a member of Congress. And I think I reflected in one of the answers that the entire delegation fought against the 100% cancellation of our behavioral health contracts. It was everyone in the delegation. I will tell you two things that I think are valuable and important about both my opponent's character and about his platform. His platform about making sure that we harness every economic opportunity is a productive baseline for New Mexico. I think I have better plans for that, but it's important. Two, his work in Congress for housing, I think, can be very useful for housing initiatives in the state of New Mexico. And thank you for asking that question.
Thank you. Congressman Pierce?
There's probably no more important question to the future of this state. I tell people that we should run as Republicans, Democrats. I don't want a one-party state. That's Venezuela, one party. I want that tension of ideas, and I have. I've known Michelle since she was the ombudsman for agency. I think it was the aging department. I was on the appropriating committee. She would come in and make these passionate pleas, and it was things that nobody else kind of paid attention to, frankly. And to see her tenacity, to see her determination, to speak for those that didn't have much of a voice, I've been a long-time admirer. Michelle and I have been on the same side of issues, and we've been on different sides of the issues, far being on the same side. She is a valiant arguer for her point of view. I respect that tremendously. But I'll tell you another thing that I like. When we have an issue, and we just had a letter that we sent out to, I forget, HHS, but one of the departments cut the funding out on the Navajo reservation for Head Start. And all of us joined together, because that's not a partisan issue. Yeah. When we can, we should always be joining hands. You know, all of us really want the same thing from our country. What we have are different roadmaps how to get there. And that's legitimate. It's legitimate to say, I would use this blueprint and you would use that blueprint. But it should never become personal. And that's what I try to do. I never back away from the fact that I'm conservative. It's just the way I grew up, it's the value system that my folks taught me. But I also never look with disdain on anyone who has a different point of view. It's that disdain that gets us into trouble. So when I look at Michelle, I see someone that I respect. I see someone that I consider as a friend. And I see someone that I can work with on many issues, and the ones we can't, we don't have to become enemies over it. That's what I see. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we're going to have the closing statements from the candidates. Congressman Johan Grisham, you're first.
No. I think it's me.
Okay.
I think it's me.
I think
fair.
you're right.
Yes. Okay.
My
And
apologies.
I say that because it's always preferred to go last, and I knew that she had won the draw.
She did. You knew that.
I only won one lottery in my life, and I got free flying lessons and a trip to Vietnam out of it. So I didn't expect to win the coin toss tonight, and I didn't. So thank you very much. You know, this is what America is and can be. We have very widely diverse viewpoints in this room, and I suspect I'm in the pretty big minority in this room. But your sheer graciousness in listening politely and respectfully is something that touches me and makes me feel good about the country. It makes me feel good about here and this process that we have. You all will be casting a vote, and it's going to determine the future. But frankly, this nation is bigger than governors. It's bigger than presidents. It comes down to you and I. Strong families create strong individuals, and it is strong individuals that create a strong country. It doesn't come from Washington. It doesn't come from Santa Fe. I like to close usually by talking about my folks. I hear the question always, and I've heard it a couple of times even today, is it just too late for New Mexico? Have we let so much go, and then the agencies are so bad? And I tell people that's the way I grew up. I had a home where Dad just didn't think we were going to get out of the cellar. He didn't think we were going to succeed. And Dad had all the skills, and he worked 2 jobs his whole life. He worked in the oil field at the very bottom ladder, just a roustabout, and then he'd come home and farm that little 5 acres. But he didn't have the belief that he was going to succeed, and he had so many skills. I wanted to play pro baseball so bad, and Dad could have. I didn't have the juice, I'll just tell you. But Dad did. But he didn't have the courage to leave home. And so Dad was always saying, no, it's just too far away from us, that we can't succeed, and let's just not try that. I'd study till, I always learned slowly. I learned well and long, but I would study till 12 and 1 o'clock almost every morning, every day in high school, and Dad would wake up the next morning, I'd be asleep at the table, and he'd say, if it's that hard, you shouldn't be doing it. Mom, on the other hand, said, you dadgum right, you're going to study that long, you're going to get out here, you're going to overcome every objective, every obstacle that faces you, and it was Mom's belief. And I juggled that. I wanted to be more like my dad, I wanted to be shy, and I wanted to be retiring and fearful, and Mom wouldn't let me. She stuck me in the bank borrowing money when I was 13 because Dad never went to a bank his whole life. Mom borrowed the money, and then I started borrowing the money at 13 or 14. And so I lived with that question, is it too late? Have too much water gone under the bridge? And in families and in minority families, they got to be asking the same question. Are there too many obstacles, too much racism, too much holding us back? I said, no, it's not too late. Because Mom, at the end of the day, put it in my head, if you got enough grit, enough determination, then we are going to succeed. So New Mexico is going to succeed, every single one of us. Across every cultural lines, we're going to unite because it's too late otherwise. It will be too late for us if we don't make a change now. I know that we can give opportunity to everyone. I know that we can have high-performing students from every walk of life, from every cultural background. And that's my purpose here tonight, to assure you that I will work tenaciously to make sure that opportunities is there for all, that dignity is there for all, that we have jobs for all. And when we have people who are not making enough money, we're going to help train them and move them up the ladder of life. Because that's what Mom taught me, that it's never too late. You're damn right we're going to fix the state, and we're going to take everybody with us. God bless you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. I want to thank the NAACP and the panelists again for an incredibly important forum. And I want to thank you for taking time on a Friday evening to participate in that forum, because how lucky am I that I get to run for governor for a state that I love and believe in. This is a state that has far more opportunity and potential than we have challenges. And I feel, particularly with you here tonight, that we are on the verge of an incredible state transformation, that we have incredible opportunities economically, that we absolutely can lead in a high quality, fair, just education for every single New Mexico child. Of course, that starts with early childhood education. We can no longer be one of the last states in the country to embrace that our children have to come to school ready to learn. That means that they can't start school as a 5 or 6-year-old, right? They got to start school as 3 and 4-year-olds. I am really clear that we need to do more in the environment, and we've got to do more to address crime that is really beginning to plague too many of our communities, including Albuquerque. When we address all of those issues, and we can, and we will, there is no doubt in my mind that New Mexico has incredible power to determine one of the best futures of any state around us. And when I talk to other states, because their next governor needs to be a real advocate and champion, those states are really clear about one of the reasons that they do so well, right? We're the whole of the donut, is because we're giving them all of our resources, and we're not leading in any of those opportunities, including renewable energy. Well, I think it's high time that New Mexico, instead of being the donut hole, we ought to be the whole darn donut, right? And like you, this is my home. I have 2 grown daughters. I just got back from Washington, D.C. I took my 3-year-old granddaughter with me. I was there this week because after 6 years, I won and fought for an appropriation that will create a national service program to help caregivers with caregiving of their disabled children and adults. We won it. It wasn't about not to be there for the very end, because that's really what this is about. It's time we took our state back. We deserve a state that will pay attention and lead in all of these areas. I'm ready to be that governor. I am hoping you will give me the opportunity to fight like hell for each and every one of you. Thank you so very much for having us tonight. I hope I earned your vote.
Thank you. Okay. Good job.
Thank you.
Don't go yet.
Thank you.
I would like to thank the candidates for their time out of their very busy schedules. Thank you for sharing this moment with us. We appreciate it very much. Thank you, audience. You've been amazing. Thank you so much for listening and for your participation. Have a good evening.